I'm Dan Fronin, VP of Marketing for Relevate, and I'd like to welcome you to Part 3 and the final installment of our series on database marketing. Today we'll have Andy Pappas, VP of Database Marketing and Analytics, and Tom Guernon, Director of Sales, presenting this final installment. If you have any questions, please type them into the question box and we will answer as many as we have time for at the end. If we don't get to your questions, we will send a personal response in the next day or so. As always, the presentation will be available later this week for you to share with colleagues and review further. And with that, I would like to turn it over to our first presenter, Andy Pappas.
Thanks, Dan, and thank you to everyone who has joined us on the call today. My name is Andy Pappas, and I'm the VP of Database Marketing and Analytics here at Relevate. This is the third and final session in the three-part series covering database marketing. Over the next 25 to 30 minutes, we'll go over a quick recap of the first two sessions and then have a more detailed dive into today's topic, which deals with blending of silos, marketing automation, and a case study illustrating the points that have been covered throughout the series. To view the first two parts of the series, you can go to our website at relevategroup.com/learn, and today's session will also be there in short order. First, we'll start with a recap of our first session. In session one, we saw that database marketing is a process. It's not simply as simple as saying, let's build a database so we can immediately see fantastic results and growth. As part of the evolving process, you have to look at the data you have, identify what the data means and how it can be used, or in other words, what actions can you take based on this data. And database marketing is also about the data, how the data is initially set up, how it is maintained, and how you, the user, are connected to it. We also touched on reporting and being able to use what has been learned in past campaigns as a guideline to future marketing and business strategy. Finally, we discussed some top-level thoughts on what to look for when choosing a solution. During the second session, we touched more on the information that is available and how it can be used. We know that there is a wealth of information inherent in a company's database, but usually in and of itself, that is not enough. There must be structure to what currently exists, and there also is a need for external or enhanced data. This extra data can assist in campaign selection, but more importantly, it can be used in profiling or modeling efforts. Profiles can provide a descriptive view of the customer base or segments of that base, and they usually act as a first step in understanding the consumer. It could also provide information on whether a predictive model might work, and if so, how well it might work. Predictive modeling will allow you to rank from high to low on a propensity for someone to take a certain desired action. And for us marketers, that is response or purchase. The models developed could be used in acquisition efforts or in customer marketing efforts. Customer efforts might be for retention, cross-sell, upsell, reactivation, lifetime value, etc. The results of these efforts will allow the marketer to better allocate the marketing dollars at his disposal. You want to get the most bang for your buck. Finally, we reviewed campaign reporting and response allocation. This is critical because the results of these past campaigns will be big drivers on future strategy, so we must make sure that the responses are allocated properly and the reporting process is timely and accurate. So what is database marketing? We must remember that there is a difference between a database and database marketing. The database is simply a tool at your disposal. It is a collection of historical information that has been collected over time and by various means. And it is this information, along with its enhancements, that make up the database. Database marketing, also known as CRM or campaign management, Salesforce automation, or channel management, however, is an approach. It is about using the information in the database and the knowledge you have gained to impact ongoing strategy. It is the ongoing methodology that constantly has refinements and allows you to predict future behavior with confidence because you have a complete 360-degree view of your customer. We spoke of the value propositions. A major component to the value proposition of database marketing is expanding the user base by putting the marketer at the controls. Instead of the marketing department having to go to IT for various reports or data extracts, they themselves can have access to the data and perform what-if analyses, create reports, and develop campaigns as desired. In order to do this, however, you need a tool that is user-friendly and one that does not require the user be a programmer. In addition, you would want the marketer to be able to have access to the information 24/7. As to scalability and performance, It's all about being able to grow with the business seamlessly, making sure that there are no major delays and lead times are as short as possible, allowing one to take immediate action and thus saving dollars immediately. At this point, I would like to introduce Tom Guernon, who will take us through the next part of the presentation.
Thanks, Andy, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So what are we going to learn in today's installment? Well, we'd be talking about common silos that exist in most businesses and what you can do about breaking them down and identifying what's actionable and meaningful. We're also going to look at automation, and this will include what marketing automation means to us at Relevate, how it's applied, and ideas of what to look for when focusing your efforts. Andy's going to come back later on, and he's going to present a case study that's going to tie all the components from all three presentations together in a client example. And then we'll do a recap of our experiences and how you can use some of that in your own success. So regarding silos, most organizations have silos, and they can be organizational, departmental, business, data, or the worst ones I would call political. And they create many challenges. And those challenges can be summarized principally as blind spots within your business. So the political silos tend to be, your rogue data or reports that have been created and distributed in order to support someone's case or to make something look good. Now, those create challenges, particularly around decisions and measuring success, because everyone's not working from the same version of the truth. Also, most silos are organizational or departmental. So marketers have done a good job of breaking down silos between marketing and sales to support revenue growth. And we're seeing a more and more of a trend of marketing and finance breaking down silos, where the marketers and the finance folks are working closely together to understand customer profitability. And then business silos tend to be the most difficult, and that's where you have various channels or subsidiaries that are actually competing for the same customer spend. So I want to give you an example of a business silo. And in this case, we've got a corporation. They're in the business of helping people have fantastic landscapes and lawns. And they've identified their market as people who like things green and colorful. Okay. Now, of those green and colorful people, there's three key segments. There's DIY, which is do-it-yourself, and these are people that will go to the retailer, they'll buy everything that they need, and they want to spend time in the yard taking care of things. You've got a DIWM, which is do-it-with-me. These are folks that are, mix of want to do it themselves, but also don't have all the skills or all the time. So they'll also pay for a service to come in and help fill in areas that they're struggling with. And then finally, you've got what we'll call a DIFM, or do it for me. And these are the folks that effectively say, I don't have the time, I've got plenty of money, this is the outcome I want. I'm going to hire whomever to come on in, and they're going to take care of this for me. So this corporation has a couple of business units to reach these people. So there's a CPG side where they sell their product to retailers who reach the customer. And the CPG channel views the customer as a retailer, not necessarily as the end consumer. So they get protective about anyone who's competing with the retailers for the consumer. On the other side, they also have a services business that sends someone to the home and they do the work and they get results. Now, each of these units collects a lot of information about the consumer. They understand what they want, they understand how they purchase, and what they value. And each has built a marketing program to achieve these business goals. Unfortunately, there's also a professional rivalry about who owns the customer. And because of this, there's valuable knowledge that's kept within each of the businesses and not shared across the businesses, and that creates some missed opportunities. So as you can see in this next slide, that there's a couple of target consumer groups. We've got in the middle, it's the do-it-yourself, do-it-with-me, and do-it-for-me. And both the services and the CPG side are competing for all of that spend. But it's been broken out here where we kind of see them as distinct areas of focus for each business unit. So there's some areas that are unique to each business unit, and then there are some areas that's shared, primarily in that do-it-with-me segment. So for the CPG people, the DIY segment could be considered uniquely theirs. And for the services side, the do-it-for-me segment could be considered uniquely theirs. So with that mindset, the marketing groups and CPG and services can allocate their spend appropriately. Now, what do you do about that do-it-with-me segment? So both the CPG and services groups have insights on who buys from them. CPG could have coupon redemptions, they could have point-of-sale data, and they could have direct research or surveys with consumers. And then the services side has direct response. They send salespeople out, they've got quotes, they have service data, and they've probably gone out and they've measured the yard. Now, each organization keeps their data to themselves and fails to recognize that collaboration with each other could have the greatest impact on overall profits, not only for their division, but also for the corporation. So the result is, if both are viewing this entire market as their turf, they're overspending to reach areas of the market that may not be the most responsive to what they're doing. So the question is, what if they share this knowledge to better optimize their offers? With an example, what if CPG coupon redeemers were baked into the services direct response models to add an additional layer of knowledge to the marketing programs? So in that case, an outcome could look like this. And I'm going to focus on the services side. So this dark area, which is the overlap between the do-it-with-me's and the do-it-for-me's, looks most like a do-it-for-me customer. And it could be the most responsive and valuable for the services business. So services would look to allocate additional spend here, while the CPG group may choose to scale back spend in this area. This slightly lighter area represents people who are an equal mix across both do-it-yourself and do-it-for-me. And perhaps these people are co-marketed to where the consumer gets a services offer, but they also get an in-store coupon because they're likely to have the services and do some of the work themselves. And then finally, in this lighted shaded area, that looks most like the CPG customer. So services could make a few decisions and maybe test in this area. For example, do they scale back their spend here to make an offer with the easiest terms and a stronger discount? And on the flip side, CPG has the same decisions to make. So this kind of cooperation can lead to improved utilization of the marketing spend and improve profitability for the corporation. And then the final part is it would help them avoid people who just don't care about the lawn because now they've learned much more about blind spots in the market. So on the next slide, we've got on and offline silos. And these are other silos that many organizations struggle with. It includes both the online and the offline data sources. So your traditional data includes customer information, your segmentation, product purchase information, solicitation history. And it could also include customer care, point of sale data. Now, these sources, when brought together, gives you a view of your customer or your prospect. Offline data can include the web behavior, search, social profiles, things that are interests on social. But many marketers get kind of caught up in the fast response to some of the web activity. There's some merit to that depending on what the activity is, and I'll give you an example of that in a bit. But a lot of the value in blending these sources of data is actually in getting a more granular understanding of the customer and filling in the blanks in what you as a marketer know about them. And this is typically accomplished through analytic applications, so blending the data into your segmentation or model scoring. And then applying that analytic knowledge to inform your traditional and online channel strategies and spend. Okay. For a single customer view, Andy touched on that a little while ago in the recap. What this leads to is what's commonly referred to as single customer 360 view. For many marketers, it does not make sense to present every single data point to a marketer or decision maker for a couple of reasons. First, it can be overwhelming. And second, there's not enough scale within those data points to efficiently take action and move the needle for the business. So what does work is you bring that data in from across the enterprise into analytic applications that you can then use to create data points and that are both actionable and have scale. So some of those data points can include which of your customers are changing. Are they reaching the end of their life cycle with you, and should you engage with them? Or are they early in their life cycle and are starting to show signs that they're going to shift into a higher value category? And what does that mean for you, for your treatment strategy and your growth? Another source of growth can be identifying underserved segments that may not have been apparent to you and taking action on them. And for many of those actions include adjusting how you target these consumers, how frequently or infrequently you present them offers, and how valuable the offer is. So this brings us to marketing automation. And for the purpose of this talk, I want to level set what marketing automation means at Relevate and for many of the marketers that we work with. It's using technology to make repetitive tasks more efficient, reduce costs, and shorten cycle times. So if you're an operations or production executive, you normally refer to this as achieving operating leverage or getting the most production out of your existing capacity. For a marketing department, this is your staff and helping them get more done with less. So first you need to consider what could be automated. And there's many things that could be automated, but decisions need to focus on what should be automated. So don't confuse what could with what should be automated. I guess as a quick takeaway from this slide. It's important to note that just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. And our advice is to focus in two areas, and those are predefined campaigns and trigger campaigns. I'm going to touch on that more here in a moment. So what is a predefined campaign? Think about it as an assembly line where the same tasks are performed each time you execute a campaign. And you want to set it up once, you want to save it, and you want to copy or clone it and apply it each time you run it. The payoff for many organizations is you could knock 2 to 3 days off of your campaign setup times. You want to focus your control campaigns because these are the least likely to need changes and they're the proven winners. And processes that can be set up include your data capture or input, your hygiene processes, your scoring, your segmentation. Those are a lot of the ETL or extract, transform, and load functions. Once the data is loaded, many campaign management tools can save your scripts or campaign instructions and are waiting to be applied to the updated data sets you have. And that's just a function of selecting the campaign instruction file and clicking run. Also, when we're thinking about automation, there are trigger campaigns. And an example of this could be understanding what activity that you see with your customer base is actually meaningful to prompt you to take action. And it's important to consider that those trigger campaigns are linked to an activity or a series of activities that do lead to the outcome, like customer retention or growth. If it's not meaningful, or you haven't identified that activity as meaningful, then perhaps you shouldn't be considering a trigger campaign around it. So in the mobile phone industry, contracts normally run for a few years, and marketers have to consider how to market when they know a contract is coming up for renewal. Specifically, does marketing to an upcoming renewal actually give the customer incentive to go shop for a better plan with a competitor? So let's say that with your customer, you start to observe that they're logging in more often than normal into their online accounts. And they've also changed their behavior, and they're reaching out to your contact center. You can infer that this customer is gathering information on their account and shopping for a better plan. So instead of being passive on this particular renewal, these changes in the customer's behavior could be meaningful and are linked to the success on keeping that customer. So it may make sense to launch a retention or save effort that is triggered by the change in their behavior linked to the outcome that you want. And it's also important to note that there could be a couple of silos baked into this example. Specifically, they include the call center information as well as the online customer service logs that the marketer may not have visibility into, and you want to bring that information into your marketing programs as well. Another example is in the financial services space. Most financial services marketers know a lot about their customers. In this case, we've got a young family, they own a townhome, and they've called that home for a few years. And as the marketer, data is starting to come in that you observe that they're suddenly starting to grow their asset balances. So what does this mean? So from a demographic standpoint, the years in residence could be informative on their own, but knowing that they're building their assets could be actionable and meaningful. So in this scenario, it could point towards the customer saving for home improvement or perhaps a down payment for a new larger home, and that would trigger either marketing offers for mortgages or for equity lines. So those are some quick examples of looking at meaningful information or a change in behavior that can lead to a marketer taking action. And again, it's important to note that all activity you observe does not mean that you should take action. You just need to make sure that you're looking at the outcomes when building this type of automation. So I'm going to give the floor back to Andy Pappas, and he's going to take us through a client case study that demonstrates how to tie all the pieces together. Andy?
Thank you, Tom. Before we get to the case study, the next slide, we're going to go look at the database marketing slide once more. This brings us back to the difference between a database and database marketing. You obviously must have the former in order to perform the latter. And the more accurate and complete the database build and ongoing maintenance functions are, then the better and more accurate the information and resulting actions from it will be. As we move now into the case study, we've worked with a company in the travel industry that is now successfully using many of the principles we have discussed during the series. Prior to having access to the marketing database, there were some challenges present for this marketer. They could only receive campaign performance reports once per month, even though campaigns were being created weekly. So this was a hindrance in them being able to use the most recent and complete information in the decision-making processes. Response allocation was at the individual or household level only. Could there be additional response and revenue allocation attributed to these efforts by different matching methods? Solicited individuals could have forwarded the solicitations to friends, relatives, or neighbors, that might have responded. We call this the pass-along allocation during Section 2. This client was also limited by lack of external data. They only had the internal data available to them for segmentation and selection. They did not have the enhanced data resident on their customer file. Thus, they could only use RFM data, which by itself is effective, but in combination with external data or predictive models would have been even more so. Also, since there was no demo data present on the customer file, it was a little more difficult to accurately predict the types of lists to acquire for acquisition marketing efforts. The marketing department also had difficulty in accessing the data. They typically had to go through the IT department, and those requests could take a lot of time. Typically, it could be days or even weeks. They would love to have a tool that their users can easily use and get the answers today at the time that the question is asked. And finally, they did not have a true solicitation history. They really did not know the frequency of solicitations by channel or in total. This type of information, if available, could have played a big role in the overall campaign decision-making process. So as we move to the solution, you can see that marketing really needed to have a consistent access to the data with more frequent updates than the monthly that existed. In their new marketing database campaign management system, IT provides us with a weekly data extract that is prepared and input into the database environment, which then allows the users to go in and have that single and complete customer view. They now have an integrated marketing database campaign management system with full reporting capability that supports 20 or more campaigns per month across multiple segments in all channels. This is accessible by multiple users, each with specific responsibilities for campaign creation or campaign reporting or KPI financial reporting. Those of you who sat in during either or both of the previous sessions will recall seeing this chart. The key takeaway here is that data or information is available from many different sources. We have demographics, lifestyle characteristics, transactional history, web engagement, return history, solicitation history, etc. Or in other words, from many different data silos, as Tom was talking about. All of this information is relevant and needs to be loaded into the database tool. Then as marketers, we use the combination of information, which is now at our fingertips, to help us in the day-to-day decision-making processes. We can perform various tests and get rapid feedback, which then can be incorporated into the database and used for refinements in the next campaigns. And we can't stress this enough, that the database marketing process is evolutionary and ongoing. So some of the benefits from and the results from the case study here, some of the immediate benefits that tie back to the challenge that we're faced were that they had more frequent and consistent updates and hygiene processes, which made for fresher data, more accurate data, and most importantly, it made for more complete data and a more complete view for each customer. They now had external data enhancements added to the customer universe, which allowed for more targeted selection and allowed for the creation of both acquisition and house models for additional selectivity. In house campaigns, the models are used in combination with traditional RFM segmentation to get even better results. In acquisition campaigns, the top deciles are selected for optimum return of investment. Attempts to make prospecting more, and this made prospecting more profitable more quickly. Another benefit is more frequent response reporting and enhanced allocation. Weekly response and KPI reports are created and automated for immediate refresh upon database build completion. This is done for both the marketing and finance departments. For marketing, the results are used to drive future campaign strategy, and for finance, the reports are more geared on running the day-to-day operations of the business. Additionally, responses were allocated to the campaign by varied matching logic rules. We spoke of the pass-along allocation, and in this case, using the various solicitation codes present, we were able to increase allocation to the campaigns. Another benefit was a more complete solicitation history, showing the number of times a person was solicited over a given time period by channel between responses. This can help determine the frequency for future selection, which channel to use, and what the offer might be. Finally, Tom spoke of marketing automation. In this particular case, the campaign management tool allows for direct marketing or email templates to be created, and these can be reused as is or slightly modified as needed for future campaign efforts. There's no need to start from scratch with each occurrence. And some of the results from these implementations was that there was an increase in ROI by over 10% in the first year, and the profitability level was more than double. There was an increase of 10 to 15% in the customer upsell and cross-sell response rates by better and more timely targeting and segmentation efforts. They're able to increase marketing campaign attribution by an additional 3% using the pass-along methodology. Direct mail costs were reduced by 10 to 20% by using different strategies. The model decile selection allowed for marketing dollar reallocation strategy or a marketing dollar reduction strategy. In the reallocation strategy, you're going to use the dollars available to you. However, you may solicit the top deciles more frequently while not soliciting the bottom deciles at all. The resolicitation effort can be done via alternate channels, thus implementing the integrated approach. The reduction strategy saves you dollars by just reducing the overall quantity of the campaign, or for a time period, by dropping the bottom segments, as these would not have had good response anyway. And finally, a key result was marketing department efficiencies. The timely, accurate, and efficient management of the data, coupled with availability of the necessary tools for the marketing team's use for analysis, reporting, and campaign management, generated significant time savings and allowed the team to focus on additional revenue generation or cost reduction efforts. In this particular case, the ability to use multi-channels and also to target their core groups, all with a time savings of 30 to 40%. Tom spoke of the various silos within an organization and the need to be able to have all the information about a person from any or all of these sources in order to make the best decisions. In our case study here, the company actually sells via two different methodologies, but with each being directed to the consumer. The first method is the direct technique, and the expectation here is that the consumer will research and book his own travel. The other is the agent methodology, whereby the consumer is directed to a local authorized agent who will handle all the research and final bookings. Typically, new customer acquisition efforts are geared through the direct methods, while customer retention efforts can use either, depending on what the historical data shows. Of course, each of these have their own targeting methodologies and offer strategies, which can be refined on a segment-by-segment basis. Predictive models were created for each of these siloed methodologies, showing the likelihood of purchase via either method. Thus, in cases where a consumer may have had history in each of the two, the method with the higher model score could be used. Typically, the modeled approach here will result in 25 to 35% increase in revenues from the top segments. Finally, the totality of information now available allows for an integrated communication strategy to the existing customer base. Customers can be reached via DM and/or EM channels. For direct mail communications, the marketer can also look at the best time of year to send to them, as well as the type of offer. For email contacts, we can look at not only at the time of year, but if appropriate, the time of day, the type of subject line, the type of creative, etc. in these offerings. So to summarize from this specific example, marketing now has more frequent updates, which allow for more current information, resulting in a better marketing strategy. This is all done via a full refresh on a weekly basis. And as we have seen, all the data is tied together at the customer level, allowing for that total and single customer view. You know everything about their transaction history, as well as the communication solicitation pattern you have had with them. They now have the ability to use a combination of internal data, which again is RFM oriented, and external data, such as the demographics and the resulting models, for improved performance. Knowing that the segments with the highest propensity to respond can greatly increase the return on investment. They can send offers based on the customer's desired preferences of being direct or agent-based, and they can use the integrated multi-channel approach when possible, using all the information at your fingertips to determine who to solicit, when to solicit them, how to solicit them, with what offer, and how often. The next chart here is going to give us an illustration of the multi-channel approach that they used. Here we are looking at the total number of times a person was solicited between their first purchase and their second purchase. In this chart, the orange colors reflect the percent of direct marketing within each bar, and the green color reflects the percent of email marketing within each bar. As you can see, both DM and EM are used, but in early stages is more likely to be direct marketing oriented. As a matter of fact, the first solicitation is always DM. And you can see the top bar has nearly 1,000 people that had only one touch, and it was via direct marketing channels. As the number of touches increases, the percentage of email solicitations also increases. And that makes perfect sense because consistently sending DM is expensive, and email marketing allows you to continue your touch strategy in a much more cost-effective method. So in conclusion, an effective database marketer will use the totality of the data available to him or her within the database and then come up with the best strategy available at that time. Then those new results will be incorporated at a later time, adding to the historical view and thus allowing for refinement on the next campaign. With that, I'll hand it back to Tom for some final thoughts and an overall recap of the series.
Okay, thanks, Andy. So recapping the takeaways from today's talk and also from this database marketing series, one thing I want to impart, and this is kind of a big don't, okay? Remember that. Don't put all your faith in a piece of software to achieve success, okay? Your starting point is never the software, it's always your processes. So you want to define and take an inventory of your marketing processes, understand where your data is, how is it organized, what are you doing to clean it, what are you doing to enhance it. And like building a house, these items will tell you what the land looks like before you do the design and get started on the actual work, okay? That way you can match up the design to what the actual environment is. Every organization has dozens of reports that someone somewhere thinks is critical, all right? From experience, maybe 10% of your reports actually move the business, or of the information within the report, those are the ones that are important to the business. So put some discipline around identifying what moves your business, and then use that information on deciding what you need to report and what you need to present. The performance indicators that you do come up with then drive your marketing strategy, and now you have some context for evaluating either software, partners, or both. So do the homework internally before engaging with a solution provider. We also talked about the importance of outside data and data hygiene and where that supports analytics and reporting. The analytic pieces are where you get your knowledge about your customers and make that knowledge manageable, scalable, and actionable. It's also what makes the knowledge predictable. Okay, so look across your business for silos and think about where you have blind spots and how you can get information from across your organization that can make those blind spots go away. And then the final piece is the automation. And from your efforts with silos and automation, don't do this for the sake of just doing it. Again, your discipline needs to be linked to meaningful outcomes first. And in many cases, this requires some analytic capabilities. Many marketers will do proof of concepts first, and then they'll also do a lot of testing to identify where their winners and their controls are before they then start bringing in and building automation behind it. So this, I think, are what the key takeaways are for your ongoing success. So